Hey listeners, this is Bob, jumping in before I get into the story today, just to give you a content warning. This story will involve discussions about pregnancy and pregnancy complications, will involve discussions about hospitalization, surgery, and recovering from surgery, and we will also be discussing some mental health topics, specifically talking about anxiety and panic-related mental health issues. If any of this sounds like something that you don't need to hear today, that you don't want to think about or listen to, go ahead and skip the rest of this episode. I'm so sorry, but I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself, and, we'll see you on the next one. No worries.
Good evening, gentle listener, and welcome to Decidable, a Wood Elf production. This week, Prophetic Wade gets wet while dogging, Mark has a life-threatening knee boo-boo, and Bob gets real and explains the fear only a father can know as he watches the love of his life and his unborn child go through hell. An eye-opening episode like no other. Yes, it's time for Bob's Baby. Now, sit back and prepare to be distracted and enlightened and enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of your favorite podcast, Distractible. If it's not your favorite podcast yet, we probably missed our chance, but that's okay. You're still here listening, so can't be too mad about it, right?
Man, this is the most indifference kind of like letdown ever. Like, it's okay.
Hey.
You can if you want to, but
It's fine podcast, okay? It's very serviceable podcast.
You hate our
little-
podcast, then here's the door. Thank you for coming. You can leave. We won't try to win you back at all.
I was not encouraging anyone to leave.
Yeah.
I was just thanking them for listening, despite somehow this not being their favorite podcast.
It's like when you're boarding a plane and they're like, there are exits back there. You can exit.
In case-
But it doesn't mean you have to. It's a very good plane.
In case there's a podcast emergency, there are exits over the wings and at the front, and there's one by the toilet.
What qualifies as a podcast emergency?
Listening to us.
I don't think that is alone is
No.
a hazard.
No, it's
We're not a radioactive podcast here.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I'm not Turing tested. That's not how you test a radioactiveness.
We're approaching emergency.
Oh man. Just delete everything I'm saying.
The line is like bouncing up.
Welcome to another episode. They jumped in early. I didn't even get to say that I'm your host, Bob, and that my co-hosts are here and or competitors, even though, spoiler alert, today it might not be super competitive. But at some point they'll probably earn points. Mark and Wade are here. Hello, what's up, John?
Hi.
Hello. Hi, I'm here.
I can't wait. We're going couch co-op podcast today.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much.
PvE podcast.
That's definitely true. Anyway, it's been another stretch of time since we've been together, fellas. How's it going? Did you all survive
Oh,
all
it's
the rains
good.
in California where we all live?
I nearly didn't.
You nearly didn't.
I nearly didn't.
Did you almost drown in a puddle?
I had no issues at all.
I almost died.
I did not.
I want to hear Wade's story.
All right.
All right. So it got a little bit chillier here in Cincinnati, California, and then it got a little bit warmer, and it rained about, 1 inch over 3 days. It was very dire straits, and there was really no stress or problems whatsoever. It was very nice, actually. Pretty great weather.
Wow. Great story.
I know. Just like that.
And Mark, what happened to you?
Well, I almost died. All right, that's that's not
Please tell us what happened.
care for my life. I feel it in this room here.
What happened? I thought
tell
it
us.
wasn't so bad. I thought it was just raining. What happened?
No. I almost died. There I was on the road in the middle of a torrential downpour. Water gushing left and right. I'm on my bicycle, desperately pedaling upstream, barely fighting against the current. Can't really make it all the way up there. And then out of nowhere, I guess flowing down the river of this setup I've created, a lady paddling her dog like a boat down the raging rapids, and I swerve out of the way, and it's going an incredible speed, an outstanding, outlandish speed of several miles an hour, and then I fell over and I scraped my knee a little bit.
Aw.
There was so much water that ladies were paddling their dogs. Why the hell were you on a bike?
Look, I'm dizzy from the impact. I can't really recall. Things are so foggy, but also shut up. It's my world.
Yeah, no, you're right. Go on, tell us.
You know, all right, fine. I did. I don't tell you. I told you.
Oh, great.
All right, good. Told us.
God, now that that's over. Bob, do you have anything exciting to add to that?
I bruised my hip a bit. It hurt.
I just bruised your ego. What happens?
It hurt.
Did anyone see you fall down and laugh at you? Because that's the real pain.
It was actually quite nice because the lady, like, I was embarrassed because I just fell over, but this one car, like, pulled up, and I swear this guy leaned out the window with the most worried expression. Like, if you looked up a definition, like, picture of someone worried, he looked like I was bleeding out, and it was so worried that I thought I was horribly mangled, and I didn't realize it because he stops his car, like, screeches. He's in the other lane. He's like, Skrr! And he rolls down the window. He's like, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Am I? I don't know. Am I? Am I okay?"
I was hoping he would follow it up with, "Are you all right? You're riding a bike in a terrible storm. What's wrong with you?"
You know, he was driving his car boat down the raging rapids. He dropped anchor right next to me, shouted down from the gangplank, "Oh, yeah, be ye all right?"
Driving his car boat up the road river.
I love the amphibious Honda Civic.
He dropped his brake anchor right next to me.
Branker.
Anyway, so I survived, and I pedaled home, and I sniffled a little bit, but I didn't cry.
Ah, somebody was a big boy. Sorry, I'm a dad now, so I talk like that.
I think you talked like that before, but I can't confirm it.
What? No. What are you talking? No, I was funny before. Now I'm just a dad.
It rained so hard here that I took the dogs outside, and when I'm waiting for them to pee and poop, I came back in, and I was somewhat wet.
Well, life is hard for everyone.
Yeah.
Good small talk, boys. I think we all come out on top of that. And for such an engaging and harrowing and life-threatening story, 2 points for Wade.
Thank you. It was really difficult.
Good try, Mark, but it was a little overproduced.
All right, that's fair enough. Will, damn you for adding in the production value to my story.
Well, anyway, those will be the last laugh. Wow, I almost just bit my tongue.
Ever?
The last laughs in today's episode. There should be some funny parts.
Point out the exits. Point out the exits just in
The
case.
exits are imagine I'm doing the weird hand-arm thing where they hold their arms too close together and then indicate with their fingers. The exits are over my shoulders, by the front, and then over the wings. And also, just punch a hole in the window and jump out if you need to.
Do we need to remain seated?
Gosh, that's a terrible metaphor, guys. It's dead. The plane crashed. It's dead. We're now here.
Oh, that's a much better metaphor. Okay, great.
No one survived except for us. Now let's do this podcast.
It's too late to escape.
There's no accents on this. You're just here now. Today, I've asked special permission. Instead of hosting some sort of competition where I keep a kind of score and arbitrarily pick a winner at the end, I'm going to tell a story. And this is not going to be like the fridge story where I was just so unbelievably angry that everything was funny, even if it was something that wasn't that funny. This is the story of how my son James was born, and about all the special things that happen or can happen when a woman is pregnant and about to give birth, and actually doing the giving birth part that nobody tells you about.
Mm-hmm.
I was prepared by television and pop culture to do a lot of waiting at the hospital, to just sort of stand around and you know, hold Mandy's hand, and for it to be a whole thing where she basically did it and I just sort of watched and brought her ice chips and held her hand and was like, "You can do it. Remember, you're breathing." And spoiler alert, that's not really how it went.
What?
I don't know how common Mandy's experience is compared to the rest of the world, but it's a little bit of a twisty story, I will say.
I'm assuming it's this is obviously the sequel to Bob's Fridge, as we all know. So everyone get your popcorn, prepare for hilarity, and lots of bumbling delivery men.
What's this one called? Bob's Life? Bob's Wife?
Bob's Baby.
BB?
BB? I know. I think you need more letters than that. I don't know. It's the story of James. His name is James, by the way.
All right.
For anyone who didn't know that.
Good name.
Yeah. Strong name. Family name.
Family name.
I do want to start this. A lot of people may know this. I want to start this by saying that Mandy was really sick for her entire pregnancy, which was not a thing that either of us knew could happen. I think I talked to you guys about this a lot, but you know how morning sickness is like a thing, right? That they show in movie and TVs. Mandy essentially had morning sickness starting around the second-ish month of being pregnant, except she had it all day, every day, and for the entire pregnancy.
That sounds terrible.
She was effectively like bedridden. And some days it would not be so bad. There was a medicine that they gave her that helped with the nausea, but sometimes it didn't do anything. And like she literally could not stand up, even sit upright. Food was not an option. There was a stretch where she basically subsisted on water if she could drink it, and then like Powerade because that was the only thing that she could keep down. So bad start.
Yeah.
Not how I thought pregnancy was going to be.
Yeah, thanks, James.
Yeah, well, it was his fault. He's a real jerk.
I hope you're listening to this years in the future, James.
I'm sure he will. This will last the test of time.
Can I ask a quick question before we continue, though?
Uh-huh.
The name James, is it from whenever we played that game with Sean and we were reading the notes and we always ended with James?
I don't think. What are you even talking about?
It's that one where you're all getting
Devour?
books to put in the circles, and then you burn the books in the circles, and there were a bunch
Western.
of notes.
It was like the Western thing with the guy with the gun, and we read the notes. It's like, sincerely, James.
I would name my child after that for certainly. What a powerful memory for both you and Mandy.
It was a close call between that and also it's my dad's middle name, and it's kind of a family name.
Ah, two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
Interesting. So your dad's from the West.
Yeah, that's implied by what I said.
Great.
You could even say it's strongly implied.
He's from the West.
Yeah, the West.
The West, sure.
All right, fair enough.
All right. Look, so the pregnancy was rough, and there were some other twists and turns, but finally Mandy got to the end, and it started kind of weird. I sort of thought, when you get to the end of a pregnancy, you start to have the baby, your water breaks, whatever. Dramatic drive to the hospital, boom. It got to the end, and because of Mandy's situation, they didn't want to let her just wait. They wanted to get the baby out, but they didn't schedule a day. They were like, well, starting on this date, you're going to get a call from the hospital at some point. It could be up to a week or 2 weeks after that date. Any day, anytime, just expect a call where they're going to be like, okay, come to the hospital. It's time to have a baby.
Wait, I thought you had to wait for the water to break, then you went in. They scheduled the water breaking?
They scheduled-ish a time for her to come in and be induced.
Okay.
They have medicine and stuff they can do to make you make a woman start having the baby.
And if the water broke before that, you would just go in earlier? They were like, oh, sorry, your appointment's not for another 2 weeks.
Show up and they're like, no, you know the time.
Can you just hold it for a while? Thanks.
Can you just hold that back in there?
Here's a bottle of Dasani. Just put some of that in there, top it up, and come back in a week.
Your shower have one of those standard plugs that keeps the water from draining. Just put that in there. Keep the baby in. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Probably. Oh, well, luckily we didn't have to experience that, but I don't know. It was weird. It was scheduled, but there wasn't a date. Anyway, we're waiting for them to call us and tell us to come to the hospital. And as we're literally on the way to a doctor's appointment, because at the end of the pregnancy, they wanted to see Mandy like every week to just check the baby and check her vitals and stuff. We're sitting in the parking lot outside of the doctor about to go in, and we get the call from the hospital that's like, all right, we have a room ready for you. Come in. And this hospital is not close to our house. This hospital is 35-ish minutes away. Because somehow, even though California is one of the most populated places, and we live in the East Bay, well, east of the Bay, and it's an extremely populated area. There is no hospital within half an hour of our house.
That seems scary.
How is that possible? So anyway, we have to go home from the doctor, get our bags and stuff, put them in the car, and go to the hospital. And we do that. It's exciting. It's time to go and to have the baby. It's very exciting. And by the time we get to the hospital, it's almost an hour later because we have to do all that stuff. We walk up, and after we've done the extensive security process, which is just awesome, finally we get inside, and the nurse is like, oh, well, you have to wait outside for a while. And where have you been? We've been waiting for you. We almost gave your room away. What are you doing? And we were like, you called us less than an hour ago. We were doing stuff.
What security process is there to get into a hospital?
Dude, getting into a hospital is like visiting someone in prison.
Whoa.
Really?
There is nowhere in the hospital that you can go where you're not buzzed through a door with a badge with your picture on it that says why you're there and all this stuff. It has a date on it and they expire. It's not like armed guards everywhere. It's just, it's like security people, but it's like that. It's crazy.
I imagine it's even worse for like a maternity ward, just because of the nature of what's going on in there and the kind of people that are crazy.
Babies are very dangerous. They must protect everyone from the babies escaping.
Not because of the babies.
Armed guards at every door to keep those babies from getting out.
You know the true nature of babies. We can't unleash that on the world.
It's like Batman Begins. Doctor is looking at a baby like, we got to get you out of here. It's dangerous. And he's like, they're trapped in here with me.
Okay, so high security. I didn't know high security hospitals were a thing. I learned something today.
I didn't either, and it was like it wasn't awful, but it was a lot, right? Because and there are COVID limits on visitors and stuff also. So like both of our parents were in town to see the baby, so they wanted to meet him as soon as possible. Only 2 people could visit at a time, which means that I couldn't be in there with both of either of our parents. So I had to like tag people out at the security door and be like, I'm leaving this room and they're going into this room. So there's not too many people in it. And the security person would like call and then call someone else. And then after a while be like, all right, you 2 can go in. You don't go in there. You get out of here. It's like a whole thing. It was a weirdly unpleasant part of it that wasn't a big deal, but was kind of annoying. But anyway, we finally get to the hospital. And we're like, this is cool. They show us they put Mandy in a room and eventually they bring me back and show us the room. There's like a big bed for Mandy and a little bed for the baby and a dad couch for me. And it's cool. Like this is not so bad. I was expecting that I would have to just like sleep on the floor or I don't know. But it's a nice room. And theoretically, if everything goes correctly, Mandy would go through labor, give birth in that room. Then they'd put the baby over in the little baby bed and that would be great. And at some point, once he's born and everything's cool, they would move us over to the like recovery room where you just hang out with your baby for a day or 2 after you give birth to make sure everyone's healthy and then you go home. So we were like, this room is sweet. It's big, it's spacious. We have our own thermostat. It's not bad. The couch even turned into a bed. So we were optimistic. Unfortunately, this room is also the beginning of the chapter I've decided to call the bad part.
Oh boy.
So we're settling into this.
Is that the name on the plaque above the door? It's just like in red lettering with dripping red blood, the bad part.
In my mind palace, this part of the story lives in an elevator where when the doors open, blood rushes in.
Oh, God.
If you're eating food, this is your time to put down that sandwich.
I thought it's a Shining. Calm down. It's a Shining reference.
They're all driving. They're not eating sandwiches at the same time. That would be far too dangerous.
They're all driving. No.
Yeah, they're all driving just to see what happens.
Did you see the post? Sorry to sidetrack. There was someone that actually posted a picture of their car, and it was just like, yeah, I actually got in an accident listening to this podcast because it's so hilarious. The risks.
Please don't do that.
Such a great podcast. Only good things happen. When you
Wait, I don't think it was a choice.
Don't do that.
The podcast forced its way onto their radio while they were driving.
They heard a joke and they were like, I'm going to choose to crash.
I don't think that was the part.
They didn't tell me where the emergency exit was. Ha ha ha!
Take that, bridge.
Do not drive. Do not operate machinery sharp. In fact, don't operate anything of any kind.
Yeah,
don't eat. Don't drink. Don't even listen while you're listening.
Our podcast is equivalent to powerful muscle relaxants, so just like beware.
Well, until you know how it affects you, at least. Yeah, so we're settling into this room, and it's super great, and we're really excited for it, and that is the bad part. So Mandy's body tends to react pretty strongly to medications. Just meaning like, if there's a painkiller, it will hit her really hard. It will make her extra sleepy or whatever, she'll feel it. But also her body tends to like getting all the little side effects that drugs frequently have listed with them, but not a lot of people might get. So we know this about Mandy. It's just sort of how her physiology works or whatever. And so to start inducing her to have the baby, because she's not naturally starting to have contractions and stuff yet, they give her this medicine that is supposed to start the process of having the baby. It just tells your body to like start doing all the stuff it's supposed to do to get the baby out of there. And she starts having contractions, which is great. And they're setting her all up. And the contractions start to be like a lot. Not painful, actually. She wasn't in too much pain, but they were like almost constant eventually. They kept happening, and they're not really supposed to do that. They're supposed to, like, you know, be some minutes in between, maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe longer. Sometimes they might be, you know, a couple minutes apart, but at this point, they're not, as far as I know, they're not really supposed to be that close together. She was having back-to-back contractions, and it wasn't too bad because, like I said, it wasn't too painful. You could just kind of tell it's contracting. But what can happen when you have contractions too frequently is it can lead to the baby inside of the mom having decels, which is short for heart rate decelerations, which is not good.
Sounds bad.
Baby's heart rate's supposed to be like between like 130 to 160, which is super fast, but it's supposed to be really fast, right? And most of the time when he was checked out previously, his heart rate was like in the 150s-ish. But so Mandy started to have these contractions, and they just kept happening, and eventually the baby was on a heart monitor. Eventually he had a decel, and the nurse kind of looked and was like, that's a problem. But she kind of like moved Mandy around. Maybe he had, you know, gotten a bad position, who knows? And she kind of worked on it for a minute, and eventually the decel went away on its own. It was a little like stressful, but went away. Baby went back to normal. Totally fine. It wasn't like painful on Mandy when this was happening, but it like triggered a like an adrenaline response almost. It gave her like a really like panicky feeling, and it obviously does not help when you're stressed out and you're worried that your baby is having trouble. But it was okay. Eventually it went away on its own, and we were like, whew. All right, that's enough of that. Let's just hang out. It's going to be, you know, 12 to 24 hours, maybe longer before Mandy's ready to give birth. This is about to be the longest part, the part that's really painful because it goes on, and Mandy keeps having more painful contractions. That's what's supposed to happen. We were mentally preparing for a long time of being in this room and helping Mandy get through, you know, a long labor and then to delivery. And we did that for about 20 minutes until the next decel happened. And this time his heart rate went like really slow. His normal range is like 130 to 160, like I said. His heart rate was down in like the 30s.
Not the 130s, the 30s?
The 30s.
The
like
30s.
the double digits.
And what was the normal?
130 to 160 is the normal range for a fetal heart rate.
Right.
Yeah, 30 is pretty low. That seems pretty bad.
So that's not great. And so the nurse, again, calmly was like, problem, and started moving Mandy around. But this time it didn't get better. And at some point the nurse was like, it's not getting better. And like literally called in the cavalry, where it was me, Mandy, and one nurse in the room up to this point. And the nurse came and went and was doing other stuff, but she came, you know, was helping Mandy, taking care of her. And at this point she called the cavalry, and like 5 or 6 more nurses rushed in, and 3 doctors rushed into the room. And they like circled around Mandy and politely but firmly were like, please back up. To me, they were like, get in your corner, stay back, get out of the way. And this was like way more stressful than the first time. This is not a casual thing where it's like, oh, that's not good, let's fix that. This is like a horde of medical professionals rush into the room. They're doing stuff. One of them's doing something with Mandy's IV. A couple of them are trying to move Mandy around. One of them's like doing some scans or whatever with a medical device of some sort. It's a lot of action, and the nurses are the ones actually doing everything. The doctors are standing back kind of by me, kind of looking at each other and talking and being like, do you think we don't need to do that yet? Okay, let's give her a couple minutes. Let's see what happens. You know, like low talking in a way where I'm standing there not really hearing what they're saying, but kind of watching and being like, what the fuck are you doing? What's happening?
Yeah.
Is this okay? And so that was awful. There were some moments where Mandy and I met eyes and were kind of both like, what is happening? Holy shit. Until the rest of what happened. That was probably one of the scarier moments of my life right there, because we're like, is Mandy okay? Is the baby okay? No one's really saying a lot because they're all really busy doing their job, which I have to say, all the nurses and doctors did an excellent job. They are like fantastic. They were amazing. I have my issues with Kaiser, and we've talked about healthcare in general before and stuff like that. The actual people in the hospital were amazing. They did fantastic work. So, like, cheers to them. But Mandy and I are standing here not really sure if someone is in life and death peril or if it's going to be fine or what. That happened for like 10, it felt like an hour, but I think it happened for like 10 or 15 minutes. Eventually, they got the heart rate back up for the baby, and everyone kind of took a breath, and the doctors were like, okay, and just left the room, and the nurses slowly made their way out. And at this point, the basic theory was, we don't know why that's happening. It's probably fine. It shouldn't happen again. He seems fine.
That's a good theory.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So, that's comforting. And everything went back to normal for maybe half an hour. It felt like a second because, again, out of nowhere, it felt like 5 seconds later, another decel started happening. And it was immediately like, call the cavalry. This is a bad sign. What the hell keeps happening? Everyone rushes back in. They start doing more stuff. And this time the doctors are way more concerned. They're looking and they're like, we don't really know why this is happening. We're very confused about this. And at this time, at some point, the baby moved and they weren't able to get a heart rate reading of him. The way they check his heart rate is they basically strap a thing on the outside of mom's belly. And that like gives the baby's heart rate by just sensing it through her belly and stuff. They couldn't find him. So the baby heart rate monitor was just like flatlined at 0. And a couple nurses were frantically moving the sensor around. And everyone was kind of just standing watching as the nurses were like, we can't get it. We can't find him. I'm not sure about this. So we don't even know what's happening right now. We don't know if the baby's okay or what. And I was like, okay, this is the worst part. This is just awful. So much worse than before. And finally, they're like, we're going to try this thing. We're going to take this huge needle and stick it up into where the baby is and basically pop the bag that he's in, because the baby up inside of mom's uterus is in a sack filled with fluid, right? When your water breaks, what's happening is the sack that the baby is in with all the fluid that he floats in, that breaks, the fluid rushes out, and that is, leading towards giving birth. Mandy is nowhere near giving birth at this point. She is, I think 2 centimeters dilated at this point, maybe. And you're supposed to get up to like 10 to give birth. And they're like, we're going to take this huge needle and stick it up in there and pop the baby balloon. And then we're going to take this other huge stick and this circle thingy and stick it up in there and put a thing right on the baby's head without being able to see anything, by the way. They just did it by feel because you can't see up inside the mom. That's not how the anatomy works. And they were like, there's almost no risk to this. There are some risks, but it's probably fine. We do this, we do this regularly. It's okay. So they do that because we can't get the baby's heart rate. And we're like, God, I hope he's alive still. Do the thing. And they do that and they get his heart rate back and it's still decelerating, or decelerated, I guess. And they do some more stuff. And finally, after just screwing around and getting to the point where the doctors started to talk to me about emergency C-sections, and they were sort of like coming over to me and they're like, we might have to do this. It's going to be fine. But if we make the decision, we're basically going to sprint out of here and rush your wife straight to an operating room. It's an emergency procedure, so we have no time to like explain it. So just so you know, if we decide to do that, the room will be empty in like 30 seconds and we'll be taking good care of your wife. Don't worry. And I'm like, yeah, good. That sounds like a thing I wouldn't worry about. Why would I be worried about that? That sounds great.
Yeah, easy stuff.
Yeah. So obviously in my head, I was like, okay, well, this is the worst part. And I hope they don't do the emergency C-section because that's an incredibly dangerous thing as far as complications and mortality around giving birth. Emergency C-sections cause and or lead to all of the highest mortality rate complications that can happen when you're giving birth. A lot of the most dangerous stuff is excessive bleeding, infections. I don't remember all the things, but like emergency C-section is the main thing Mandy and I had talked about we wanted to avoid. We wanted to do everything to keep that from happening because that presented the most danger to both her and the baby. So we're back in the room and the doctor's like, okay, well, we have to decide in the next couple minutes if she doesn't get better. And right as they were about to make the call and sprint her out of the room, the baby chilled out and his heart rate went back up and Mandy sort of calmed down. She had been in incredible stress and like panic and some pain from all this, but he chilled out and the doctors were like, all right, that seems good. We don't know what we did. I don't think we fixed anything, but he's fine now.
Oh, yeah.
Did they leave in the exact same manner? They were like, all right, this was a lot scarier, but we're done. See you in a bit.
They did. They straight up did. The doctors looked and were like, I guess we can go, and skittered away, and the nurses all sort of filtered out. Mm-hmm. And our nurse, who was like the one who was supposed to be taking care of our room on the floor or whatever, was like, okay, well, if she could just chill out for a while and the baby can stop doing that, it's almost time for the epidural, which is the thing where they numb like the bottom half of the woman's body. So it makes it, instead of incredibly painful, it makes it more like incredibly uncomfortable when the contractions are happening and when she's trying to push the baby out and stuff. Really doesn't completely take away the sensation of pain and discomfort, but it makes it more bearable. Anyway, is the point.
I've had an epidural before, so I can attest to this.
How was it?
It was fine. It's actually worked out really well. It's things that people probably don't understand too well, they actually tap into your spine. And so they pick a spinal column piece and they stick a needle in there, and then they inject a local anesthetic and a painkiller into that specific nerve. And it basically makes everything below that not really feely very much.
Yeah.
But with my case, they put too much, paralytic or, and my legs weren't working properly, which isn't supposed to happen.
That's weird.
Yeah, but it's actually not in the bloodstream. So I'm not a medical professional, but I believe in the case of childbirth, it's less likely or extremely unlikely or doesn't get into the baby's bloodstream at all. I think.
Something like that.
I'm fairly sure.
Wouldn't you damage a nerve by stabbing it with something?
I guess
I don't know how it works.
Stab the nerve itself.
What do you stab?
You stab into the area where the nerve is.
I have some thoughts about that process, though. How was it having them put the thing into your back, Mark? Because
thankfully, I was asleep.
watched them do it to Mandy. Okay.
I was asleep,
That's
yeah.
good. It's not a great process, because I understood before this what an epidural was. And so it's basically like it's more complicated and delicate, but it's basically similar to putting an IV in, right? You stab with a needle, and then over that needle, you feed a little like plastic tube, and then that plastic tube delivers the medicine directly into the little hole that you made.
How do they get it into her back if she's pregnant and laying on her back?
They made her sit up and then arch her back forward so that her back was like a big stretched out arch, and then they're just like, sit real still, stabbing your nerves. But also the process of finding the right spot was way less precise than I would have thought. I watched, they didn't let me watch from the side where they were doing the stabbing. I was in front of Mandy, so I couldn't see. But the anesthesiologist comes in, and they call an anesthesiologist because it's a difficult and important procedure to do correctly. And they get it all set up, and they sterilize her back, and then they put a dressing over it and stuff, all this stuff to make a sterile field in the area. And then the anesthesiologist just took a needle and started poking Mandy's back and was like, poke? And does that hurt? And Mandy is like, yeah. And the anesthesiologist was like, okay, wrong spot. Poke somewhere else. Does that hurt? Mandy is like, well, less, but yeah. Okay, it's like you're poking my back. They did that for like 10 minutes. They were just like, poke. Oh, that hurts. Poke. Oh, that hurts more. Sorry. Poke until they find one where it doesn't hurt and Mandy doesn't feel it in her legs or anything. They kept asking her questions. And then when they find the right spot, they're like, all right, that's the spot. And they mark it, and then they do the epidural. Mandy's bruise on her back from getting the epidural, like several days after when we were trying to leave the hospital, was like 6 inches around. It was a big bruise.
Yeah, eesh.
And that's not how I would have thought you would do that in such a delicate area as the spine, where you're just like, poke. Does that hurt? Ah, darn it.
That does seem relatively barbaric.
I don't think that's standard procedure. I'm going to go off on a limb and say, like, they know what spine piece they're looking for, and there's, like, a place to... What would they gain from knowing what hurt?
Well, so what it seemed like she was doing is she was trying to find, like, the center of something. She started off and was, like, poking around on the left side, and then found kind of the edge of that, and then went over to the other side and was kind of doing the same thing, and eventually... What she was aiming for was some piece of anatomy or whatever in the middle of that area where Mandy didn't feel the pain. Presumably is where she wasn't hitting any nerves that were running down Mandy's spine. And it was like, I don't know, it was like an artery or something where the medicine was supposed to go. But it just was a really concerning thing to watch. It didn't bring a lot of confidence. And also, like, after the anesthesiologist finished doing this and put the tube in and got it all set up, she then gives, like, a test dose of the drugs and is like, let's see if it works. Let me know if your legs start to get numb, and it takes, like, 10 or 15 minutes. So you're sitting there like, are your legs numb? No? Okay, just keep waiting. God, I hope it's in the right hole or whatever. But I get why they don't. I mean, aside from it being sterile and I couldn't go where the sterile field was, I get why they don't want the dads to watch. It didn't seem like a great process. I feel like they could refine that one a little bit.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like how I would have expected to. I thought they would just like have some super bed that's got like a hole underneath pre-planned for applying the epidural. And it's like, okay, just lay down, stay comfortable. We're just going to unscrew this little spot. We're going to stab in the epidural and you're good to go. Not lean forward, pretend you're trying to touch your toes while also there's a baby in the way. Now we're going to hammer your back for 10 minutes. Oh, this might be it. Here, let's get another 15 minutes while I just wait and see. If we're not numbing your legs, something will be numb. I hope it's not something important.
Look, man, people think that medicine is a lot more elegant than it is. It's really pretty barbaric, some of the things you have to do, because doctors don't have green Healy goop in the back, you know? They kind of just like stop the red life goop from getting out of your body and hope your body knows what it needs to do to make that not happen anymore. That's kind of like the entirety of medicine.
Well, in the hope that the chemicals they slurry in there are all mixed together real good and don't do any crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I like to think there's a cauldron in the back and they just add ingredients, stir it up, and they put it in a needle. Like, yeah, this is what they need, hopefully. We didn't have Eye of Newt, but hopefully Eye of Salamander works instead.
Dude, that's literally it, except they have more technical names for it.
The injection of Theseus.
Ius Salamanderus.
You know, they thought you would have figured it out a few hundred years ago, but when they discovered blood types, you know, before that, it was real weird. Yeah, sometimes people just got bad blood. You put blood in and it gets not blood. That's weird.
Is that what that Taylor Swift song is about? I didn't realize that was about medicine.
Yes, it's actually a historical song, going back in time.
Well, that song was about robbing banks.
You do a blood injection and the person gets worse and you're like, now we got bad blood. Damn it. If only there was a way to check that. Well, so this is not related to our birth story at all, but I learned in researching all of this and preparing for what was going to happen, apparently not preparing well enough, but trying to, tribes on the continent of Africa have apparently been giving totally successful C-sections since like the 19th century. I don't know the details because I'm not a medicine person, and also I didn't continue to try and research down that hole because I didn't think that applied to Mandy's pregnancy, hopefully. But apparently the white guy who discovered C-sections, Mr. Caesarean or whatever his name is, went to Africa and saw them do it and was like, holy shit, you just cut that lady open and took the baby out and she's fine. We don't even know how to do that with our fancy Western medicine. I don't know the details, but I thought it was fascinating. Literally hundreds of years ago, midwives in tribes in Africa were capable of doing a C-section, surgically removing a baby, and both the mother and the baby would survive and recover and be just fine, which is wild.
I wonder if they applied the epidural the same way.
They really nailed it down with one prick epidural.
They probably had beds with holes in them.
They figured it out. It's the bed hole. You're right.
They had the super beds long ago. They mastered that, actually. We've lost the art.
But anyway, I just thought that was an interesting medical fact because that means that they were doing surgery, which basically predated a lot of successful, sort of Western medicine surgical techniques and stuff. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's a long time ago to be doing that kind of operation and it turning out okay, at least in my head, considering how barbaric medicine is now with apparently all the knowledge and technology we have.
Yep. Well, that's your historical medical fun fact of the day, but unfortunately we have to go back to the epidural.
Which definitely worked, right? The first time?
You know what?
Didn't you hear?
It ended up being totally fine. All of the process of the epidural made me super uncomfortable, but it ended up working perfectly. Her legs got numb, and then they started giving her the full dose of the drugs, and so the epidural was in, and that was going to stay in until the baby was born. And so we come to the end of the chapter that is called The Bad Part.
Oh, good. Okay, so the bad part's over with.
So
Sure.
logically speaking, this must be the good part.
Obviously.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad the bad part's over with.
That's why the next chapter is titled, of course, The Badder Part.
No, come on.
No one saw that coming. No one would have seen that coming.
I was hopeful that it wasn't.
Yeah, well, of course. It's not over. It never ends. That's the last thing I have written on my my notes for this, by the way, is just kidding. It never ends because now there's a baby in my house. Turns out you bring that home with you, and then there's a whole other set of things that happens.
So epidural worked. Then we just cut to baby in house. Now it's worse.
Yep, that's the whole story.
Wow.
No, yeah, so the badder part, the next part. So, like, the epidural worked. Her legs went numb, and they started giving her the regular dose of the medicine. And so she was going to be in, almost no pain at that point because the contractions were not getting very painful yet. And they checked her, and Mandy was 4 centimeters dilated. 4 out of 10. For those of you who don't know what the correct answer is, she was almost halfway. And that's great.
4 out of 10's better than The Last Jedi got.
Yeah, better than a lot of movies get. Not even in Rotten Tomatoes.
It's always movies with you, Wade. How many more are you stealing?
Well, I gotta be ready for the next episode, I hope.
Yeah. So for about 10 minutes, the epidural is working. Everything is fine. And then 10 minutes goes by and Mandy starts to feel kind of funky. Remember I said that drugs tend to have a very strong effect on her. She starts to feel kind of weird. And suddenly, you'll never guess what started to happen. The baby started having another extended bout of deceleration.
Come on, James.
Deceleration 2.
Deceleration 3.
3.
The decelerating.
Deceleration 3. The slowening.
So slow. It was the slowest it had ever been. This decel was so bad that it dipped under 20 beats per minute at some point. It didn't go into single digits, but it dipped even lower than previously. And this time, it got worse kind of quickly. Everyone rushes back in. All the nurses are back. The anesthesiologist is back, and she's all, oh, shit. What did I do? Because it started where, after the epidural started happening. And Mandy keeps feeling like worse and worse. The baby's heart rate keeps edging lower and Mandy keeps feeling worse. At one point, Mandy was in so much, I don't know if it was pain, but it was like distress and discomfort and everything. The doctors were asking her questions, trying to gauge, what she's feeling, what's happening. She couldn't even respond. She heard them talking to her, but she could not focus and get her mind together enough to give them a response to the question. And so the doctor asked, it was like, where does it hurt? How much out of 10? How much is your pain? And she would look at them and then she couldn't speak. And they were kind of like, so a lot of pain probably. Interesting.
Is that normal?
No, I don't think it is. The epidural is supposed to not do that. But anyway, what they think happened after everything cleared up and I sort of talked to them for a second is that the epidural did what it was supposed to, but also somehow it accelerated her contractions. Remember, she was having almost constant contractions because of the medicine they gave her initially. Well, at this point, the contractions were just actually constant. She was just contracting 100% of the time. It wasn't stopping. They gave her a drug that's supposed to stop contractions from happening specifically. No effect whatsoever. And this was going on a long time. And they kept watching, and it got to that point where the doctors were kind of talking to me and trying to explain to Mandy, we might have to do an emergency C-section. If we do that, we're going to rush you out of the room, all that same stuff. And at this time, it just kept getting worse, and everyone kept getting more stressed, and they were like, can we give her this? No, we already gave her that. Can we try this? I tried that before. It didn't work. To this point, all the medical people had been super calm. They were working very with purpose, but they were all calm and they were like, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to try this. But it got to the point where even the nurses and the doctors were kind of like, do this right now. See if she responds to this. No response. Okay, we need to try. It was escalating. And I could tell from the mood that it was escalating. And at one point, the doctor just looked over at me and was like, we have to do it. And then looked at the group and was like, emergency C-section, let's go. It was like a tornado of activity. They gathered the IV, all this stuff. They unplugged the things. They moved the bed. Whoosh, out of there. And I am left standing in a room by myself. Well, they just rushed my wife and baby out of the room to an operating room to start an emergency surgery. And I just stood there for a second. Kind of shocked, right?
Yeah. I'm shocked. That was so fast.
Yeah. From the doctor saying the words to me alone, completely in a silent room, maybe 20 seconds. Everything just pull the plug, get the thing, roll the bed, get out of here. We're gone. We're moving. It's crazy.
I can't believe Mandy and the baby put you through this.
It turns out someone's at fault. And we'll get to that.
Oh, I can't wait till that chapter.
Uh-huh.
Oh, interesting.
It's not me, right?
It's not you.
I would be amazed if somehow it was you.
Do you have a friend named Wade? Because this is all his fault. I do, actually. I knew it.
Points for Wade for predicting the future.
Yes,
Is it his fault?
Also,
It's his fault?
But you lose those points for it being your own fault.
do I need to get legal counsel for this?
Yeah, actually, you should have received service at this point. If someone knocks at your door asking for Mr. Barnes, definitely answer it and confirm who they're looking for before you do anything else.
Okay, I'm going to trust you on that.
But yeah, so I'm left alone in the room, and at that point, I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. Because normally the father can be there if they want to be for like the birth of a baby, right? If it's a natural birth, I'm holding Mandy's hand, very stereotypical. Even if it's a C-section, I'm allowed to be in there. They put up a drape or whatever, and I'm allowed to sit by Mandy, the top half of Mandy, and hold her hand while they do the thing. Because they don't make you go unconscious. Mandy is totally conscious during the C-section in this story, which must feel pretty freaking weird. But yeah, I didn't really know what was going on. And then at some point after they were all gone, a nurse just came and brought me some scrubs and was like, put these on, and then we're going to put you in like a place to wait. And if there's time, they'll bring you into the operating room, maybe.
Oh.
And so I did that, and she walked me over to this room, which was the recovery room, where they were going to bring everyone after a successful surgery, hopefully. And I was put in there alone. And I swear to God, it felt like an hour. Normally, that sounds like a stressful situation, probably, and maybe a very upsetting situation. Telling the story, that's like how I feel. I still feel pretty upset about this. At the time, it escalated from me being worried, upset, anything like that, to like rage. Like I was gonna fight God if he came and tried to take Mandy or the baby away or whatever. I don't know. I was in that room clenching my fists, thinking and saying stuff that is burned indelibly into my memory and that I would never in a million years have thought that I would say or do or even think.
I want so badly for someone to have come in here and be like, see, I told you it'd be okay.
The doctor examined Mandy's cervix, and I was like, I don't think it's big enough for a baby to get through there. And the doctor was like, oh, yes, it is.
I'm sorry.
And I forgot there was a pipe under there and just, wow.
So they pulled the baby through, and all I hear is slunk, whoosh. The water's going everywhere.
There's got to be some kind of shutoff somewhere. You'll find it.
See, I told you.
Can you hold this for a while? I gotta go get some. Just pinch it shut.
Oh, you want to stitches or put a Band-Aid on this? No, you just hold it. Just kink it over. It'll stop.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to detract from Clenched Fist Bob. Just it reminded me of when that dude said that to you.
I appreciate that, actually, because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to tell this part of the story and keep it together. But, like, this was the actual worst part. I was in a room, an empty room, and the lights were off. It was like, it was like emergency lighting only or whatever. By myself, it was probably more like 15 or 20 minutes. It felt like forever. I wasn't sure what was happening. If it was bad that it was taking a long time because something bad had happened, or if it was good and they were just busy. I had no idea. No one came and updated me. At some point, some poor nurse or somebody came through and was just like doing their job, looking, they came in and were like, I need this thing. And they saw me, and I must have shot them just the craziest fucking glare that I can't imagine because of what I was thinking and saying in my head. But that is, and hopefully will remain, the worst 10, 20 minutes of my entire life. I don't know how to express what I was making promises to God and any God that would listen. I was making, bold claims about what I would change my whole life. I was doing all the most cliched things, right? Where I was just like, I would give anything to even know if it's okay or not in that operating room to make sure that they come back. If one of them doesn't come back, what is going to happen? All this stuff, all the possibilities were racing through my head. It was really awful in like a very angry way, because all I wanted to do was rush out of there, find the room where they had her, and go in and see what the hell was going on. But I had to wait because I didn't know where they were, and they were going to get me once it was okay, once it was time for me to go in the room. And I couldn't, I didn't want to bust in there and mess it up because then it's my own fault. But that was just an insane time. I've never felt like that in my entire life. No amount of anger or rage or sadness has ever risen to that level. And it was really unexpected. Sort of went into this whole day expecting it to be a lot of boring waiting around and Mandy being in pain and me bringing her, whatever I could and trying to help. This was not. When we got to the hospital, mind you, about 10 hours before that moment of me in that room, this was not an option that existed because there was no reason to expect. Mandy was perfectly healthy. The baby was healthy. Everything was chill. There was no reason to expect that it would deteriorate into an emergency C-section at midnight, in the middle of the night, when, the staff isn't even necessarily full. They called in nurses from other areas to come help. It was crazy. And I'm sure other people have experienced worse than that in terms of, hospital situations, life and death situations. I hope that anyone listening and that you guys never have to be in that situation.
You said it was like 20 or 30 minutes of waiting, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that is like when every second your heart's racing and you're panicked, that is such a long time. I remember during the Drowned Man saga when I found water dripping out of an air vent and I went upstairs, saw water pouring out of the fan and the ceiling light, and my thought was Molly drowned in the tub. And it was about 5 seconds of feeling that, however long it takes to run up a staircase, 5-10 seconds of feeling that. And that felt like an eternity. I cannot imagine that on the minutes to 10 minutes to whatever, half an hour type scale. That is a long time to be feeling that.
Yeah, I sort of lost the point of what I was getting at, I guess. But for me, this is the most unforgettable, life-changing part. Well, maybe holding my son for the first time, but
who cares about that?
It was an experience that definitely changed the way I feel about, life, being alive, staying alive. And I will say, in that moment, I also wish that we had done every little tiny thing that was available to us while Mandy was pregnant that could have changed that outcome even the slightest little bit. Because there's all this stuff. When a woman gets pregnant, there's all these rules. And, you can't eat sushi and can't have caffeine and all this sort of stuff. Those might be obvious, maybe not to some people, guys who don't know how this works, like I didn't at the start of it. But there's all this little stuff where it's like, you shouldn't lay in certain positions. You should take this, make sure you're taking your vitamins, take these things, there's all these hundreds of things you can do at any moment. And it got to a point where it wasn't just like, I was like, bah, that's stupid. It got to a point where Mandy was like, I don't have energy for this. Like, we want to be the best parents possible. And she did everything she could. Like, it's not like she was ignoring, obvious and helpful things, but it got to a point where how much will this help versus I'm exhausted because I'm pregnant. And I was just like, man, I wish we had done everything we possibly could. I didn't realize this could be this crazy because I always sort of imagined emergency C-sections were like, you're in a car accident or something crazy happens and it precipitates, something where the mother's in danger, the baby's in danger, and they're like, we got to get him out now. This baby needs to come out. But I didn't think it would just happen out of nowhere. And, I guess that's always possible. Medical complications can just happen, but it really had never crossed my mind. And I don't think it crossed Mandy's mind either. But eventually, after what felt like forever and saying and thinking and doing things I never thought in my lifetime I would, a nurse came and got me and brought me to the operating room. And right as we were walking in, I was expecting to see, them doing surgery on Mandy and hopefully our baby, whatever, being held by a nurse. As we're walking in, she's like, right as we got into the operating room, the baby on his own for no apparent reason came out of it and his heart rate went back to normal. So we didn't do the C-section yet. We've been preparing the, surgical field. We've been getting ready. We're going to still do the C-section, but it's not emergent anymore. And so you're going to get to be there before they start. I got to sit there with Mandy and hold her hand while they were doing it. And it's incredibly lucky. I don't know what would have happened if it played out differently and if anything bad happened. I honestly can't imagine because I was surprised at what I was thinking just waiting to hear the news. But it turned out fine, which was really jarring and shocking because I was, expecting any of the worst things I could imagine to be what would really happen there. I walked in, Mandy was on the table. They had given her a bunch of drugs, obviously, so that she didn't feel the surgery, but she was still conscious. And I sat down and said hi, and it was all right. She was really drugged up, trying to stay awake, but she was awake for it. And they just started the surgery. Oh, I even forgot. As I was walking in, I saw them starting the first incision, which was another thing I never thought I would see.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I walked through the door and it was like a TV show. The doctor was there with her hand on Manny's belly and it was like scalpel and took it and just started slicing the slice on the outside of Mandy, and I was like, oh, take me to the other side. Holy fuck, what the hell?
You got in there and they were just like, no. We got to show off our skills. It's like when someone walks into the kitchen when they're cooking.
It's like a hibachi grill. He tosses it up in the air and catches it in his hat.
Impress him. Cheer him up. He's probably really stressed out. This will cheer him up.
Pulls out the sake bottle for you.
Yeah.
I squirted it in my mouth.
He cuts up the placenta. He's like, all right, open wide, wider. Goes to the back of the room. King. I missed.
Yeah. So I didn't want to see that, but I only saw it for a little bit of a moment. That's burned into my memory too, but for like completely different reasons. Watching someone cut into your wife with a scalpel is weird and concerning, even when you totally understand what's happening. But yeah, they started doing that, and I cannot imagine what it must feel like to be a woman giving birth and to be awake and conscious, even if you can't feel it, but to be awake and conscious while people are cutting into you and removing a huge baby from your deepest inside areas. It's not like they're cutting off a mole or something. It was weird.
Yeah.
Like I sat on Mandy's side of the thing, and it was almost like a cartoon, where they do the surgery and there's like car maintenance noises and there's like things flying around and it's like like it was like that.
Oh.
It was weird, man. I don't know what Mandy felt. I hope she didn't feel anything. She didn't complain about it, but it was wild.
You said she was talking at this point. She was no longer like unable to speak. She was able to speak and communicate normally.
Yeah, I mean, it's like she was really drowsy. She could talk.
Gotcha. Okay.
But she was just trying to stay awake. She was just really sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so this isn't like a funny story like the fridge or anything. And I don't really. It's not. I try to like make some funny moments. You guys are helping with that, but I just felt like I had to share that as the worst part of my life that's happened so far, which probably is lucky for me. I know it was an awful experience. I still can't think about it because it makes me incredibly upset and brings back a lot of feelings, but I'm sure that compared to some people's lives, it could be way worse. So, and the punchline that I've already given away, because I told you all that we brought him home and he's fine, is that we have a baby. They got him out. We heard him scream for the first time, which was pretty wild. And then we saw him get passed over the curtain to a nurse and brought to a warming table. They examined him. He was moving his arms and legs. They said he was fine. He handed him to me, and I held him up next to Mandy's face so she could see him. And they started wrapping up the surgery. They started suturing up her incision and whatever they do to finish that. And that was it for the part that preceded giving birth. That was the end of that. It was a crazy roller coaster. It involved several moments that I thought would be the worst part of my life, and then it kept escalating, and I don't know. I guess I just feel like I wanted to talk about it because for anyone else who's having a baby or has had a baby, I'm curious how normal that is. Is it normally like a joyous thing where the mom is in pain, but the whole time you're like, it's worth it. There will be a baby when you do this, or is it's an insanely stressful, like life-changing experience in the other way that I had it? Nobody talked about that. There's a lot of stuff involving pregnancy and having a baby that I feel like people did not accurately describe or people just didn't talk about. But maybe we just had a really wild pregnancy. Well, Mandy had a really wild pregnancy. I watched.
I mean,
I know.
Oh no, you go. I'm speaking from ignorance, so
do it.
I yield the floor.
I know from my mom's perspective, raising the kids was the worst part of her pregnancy. So I think normally I don't have an answer.
You made the right choice, Mark. You let the one who knows go first.
Yes. All right, fair enough.
I was really glad you set the table and made it look like I really knew what I was going to talk about there. So thanks, buddy.
All I know is from my mom's story, which she has repeated to me at length, at least a few times a year, about my own birth, which was traumatic in a way that, much like you described, she didn't have to get a C-section, but it was still just like, it seemed like even less care was applied. She didn't have kind of like the attentive care, and she can attribute that to like being a foreigner. She thinks there was also a language barrier, and so it was very difficult for her to get the kind of care she needed, which also led her to want to become a nurse. So she actually was a nurse in labor and delivery. She was a labor and delivery nurse. So she did that because she didn't like how little care she felt she got, and she wanted to make sure that other people got the level of care she desired. But it's exactly as you described. Everyone in there, like the nursing staff, probably were very attentive and cared as much as they could anyway, given that people are probably running in being like, I need to know what's going on in this room in 2 seconds because there's a crisis. So information needs to be exchanged pretty quickly. And then, like when to make the call, and the doctors with 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out, like, whoa, and then I just think some people probably have a relatively normal, quote unquote, birth. Some people have a terrible time. I don't know. I'm a man. I can't speak for any of this.
Yeah, I don't know how it feels to you, but like you guys might be listening to me and be like, oh, he's been through it. Now he knows how it works. No, the fuck I don't.
Mm-hmm.
As a man, it all feels very alien, and it feels really weird to me how some people, public figures, politicians, can just speak about something like pregnancy or issues surrounding pregnancy or women's health more generally and feel like they have any idea or authority to say anything about it, because it is wild. Mm-hmm. And man, does it feel like you're on the outside the whole time as a man with the doctors and everything that happens, and it's crazy. So even though I was there and technically I went through that in my capacity, I still feel the same way. That it's wild. It is such a crazy ride.
I wonder how many teams they have of like the doctor nurse combo like rushed in whenever the deceleration happened. Is it like a room of like people just wearing their bands like on the start track and like a whistle blows and they take off and whoever gets in the room first gets to claim that room?
Kinda. The way that it seemed to work is the floors were divided into sections. The way that hospital was laid out, it was kind of like half and half. There was a nurse's station on each side of the floor. So they seemed to be responsible for the rooms on their side. And then there were like 5 to 7 nurses who sort of hung around the nurse's station, and they each had their own patients they were caring for. So we had, the shift would change, but we had the same nurse for like the whole shift. And then when they got off and the new nurse started working, they would like introduce us to the new nurse who's going to be like our nurse and tell her what's happening and make sure she knows. And then, but when something happened, any nurse that was available in that area just seemed to rush to the room. And the doctors were like hanging around. They had I don't know, they weren't always there, but they were like on call. And it seemed like there were, I guess, 3 total doctors on call for the whole maternity floor or whatever. And they all showed up every time it started to happen. So they called in like anyone who was available who worked in this area, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess it was pretty serious. I don't know if they always do that for anything that happens, but the deceleration stuff they didn't fuck around. Even when it was before they called the cavalry, the first nurse was kind of like waiting for the right moment to call. She just had to do her first couple things to try and fix it on her own. Yeah, so then we had a baby. And if you think that ended the traumatic stuff, boy, did it not.
The real worst part.
Oh, no.
No, well, so for me, the worst part was definitely in the room. But then after you have the baby, they take you, they brought Manny into recovery, and she was okay. She was awake, not in a lot of pain, even though she had a huge, incision in her belly and then in her muscles and her uterus and whatever. She was okay. And then they sent us over to the other wing, which is like the recovery wing, where you hang out with your new baby in a room and they watch everybody and make sure the baby's healthy and that mom's recovering and everything's good. This wing had a bunch of rooms and a lot of them had doors open and they all looked like pretty normal rooms. Nothing crazy. A little smaller than the other ones, but they look like hospital rooms. They took us over here and they were sort of rolling Mandy's bed and I was rolling the bassinet with the baby in it very carefully. And we passed a bunch of rooms and finally they came to a door kind of near the end of the hall, and that was the one we were going into, and it has to be the smallest hospital room I've ever seen in real life or otherwise. It was so small they couldn't fit all the equipment inside the room like they were supposed to. I don't know why any of the other empty rooms that all looked perfectly fine weren't available, but I swear to God they put us in a closet instead of a hospital room, and nothing bad happened. I just don't understand why they had such a small room. The problem was they couldn't fit the heart rate monitor for Mandy in the room and the IV machine so they could give Mandy fluids. Or if you did have those both in there, then you couldn't open the door to the bathroom very wide. But, it was weird. They could have given us any room on the whole floor. There was a lot of empty rooms. Maybe I insulted someone. I don't know. But this point started what was probably the worst part for Mandy. And I didn't experience this, so this is, I was there and I was trying to help and I was taking care of the baby as much as I could and stuff, but this is really Mandy's story, and this is like a big thing, another big thing that neither of us really understood the seriousness of it. But so Mandy physically was okay. We got into the recovery room. Her incision was all right. Her pain was okay. She was doing okay. There were some side effects and stuff, and they were treating them. And physically, like, but from the C-section recovery, in terms of that, she was doing fine, doing all right, got up and started walking eventually. And the thing that was not okay was that they kept trying to give her pain medicine and all these other, well, not a lot, but a couple other medicines to help treat her side effects, her pain, whatever. And the combination of the medicine that they were trying to treat her with, including and especially, I think, the painkillers, with her hormones and what her body was doing chemically inside of itself, created such a crazy storm of what I think is fair to say is like postpartum panic disorder. I don't know if that's an official term. I think it is. But she could not sleep. And she had random bouts of just extreme, like, fight or flight adrenaline responses. And it kept making her blood pressure spike, which was concerning to the doctors. So they'd come and look, and they would come and take her measurement, and it'd be super high. And blood pressure off the chart, not a good sign. And then they'd be there, and the doctor would talk to her for 10 minutes, whatever. And by the end, her blood pressure would be totally back to normal. It was a purely physically triggered, like, emotional panic attack from the mix of hormones and painkillers and everything that she had been receiving and that they were pumping into her. And it was to the point where one time she had a really bad spike in her blood pressure. She was feeling like she was going to have a heart attack. She was feeling terrible. And she looked at me and was like, I'm going to die.
Jesus.
I just want to tell you that I love you. Take care of our son. I'm dying right now.
Good God.
And it was not, I mean, I'm sure she was emotional. This was a crazy time. But this was not like an emotional thing, like she's having negative thoughts and got into some kind of cycle. It was a physically triggered panic attack that made her sincerely feel like she was going to die. She still, even now, has said that, like, she doesn't think that was unreasonable, that she remembers how it felt, and that it felt completely out of her control, and that it felt like she sincerely thought she was actively dying, that she was about to just kick it. And this was another thing that we had heard about. You hear about postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. This is a common thing that happens to people, women who give birth. But the extent to which this was causing her physical symptoms. Her blood pressure going so high could have caused a stroke or an aneurysm or whatever. It could have caused serious medical complications purely from this hormonal, like, physical body chemistry response that she was having. And she wanted me, this is very personal and very vulnerable, and she wanted me to talk about this because she was completely unprepared for how it felt and that was a possibility either. Mandy has dealt with anxiety in her life. Grad school was very stressful. She's had a lot of stress, and she can be a stressy person. She's a perfectionist, and she stresses about things. She thought she had, experienced anxiety and had coping tools. You can learn how to manage anxiety, how to try and distract yourself, bring yourself out of it before you spiral down and it gets worse and worse. She thought she knew what that was, but according to her account of all of this was a whole other thing entirely. If this is what a real serious full-on panic attack is like, it's unlike any emotional anxiety she's ever dealt with. I mean, she just told me, I was like, do you want me to talk about that? I can leave that out. And she was like, I think you should talk about it, both so that, you can tell the story and everything that happened. It was horrible for her, but it was also stressful for me. Having your wife, your significant other, whatever, look you in the eye and sincerely say, I am dying, I love you, goodbye, without, any doubt or jokingness or even, the drama of just, they're being overly dramatic about whatever. That was a surreal experience. And so she was like, also because I want people to know this is possible. That when women talk about postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety or panic, it can be serious shit. It can be such a strong emotional experience that it causes real physical symptoms to come into, to cause things that could give you a heart attack or a stroke or whatever. It was a serious threat to her life, and it felt like there was nothing we could do about it because it was so overwhelming and it was so real. No matter how, I don't think there was any reason she was dying except that her blood pressure was going up because she was feeling so panicked, but it was real, even though it was purely from, from her own body and her own brain chemistry manifesting in her experience. It was crazy shit. So that postpartum stuff, that is way more serious than I ever thought it could be. I'll say that was the last terrible thing that happened, finally. But like, that was an experience that neither of us expected even remotely. I did not think that was possible.
Yeah, that is. And it's good to talk about because I think so many people don't talk about it because they think it's either weird or unrelated. But, man, I can't imagine. And I'll never experience it. So it's one of those things where all I can do is listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't either. That's such a difficult thing to imagine going through. I'm glad everyone's okay and that it turned out all right. But in that moment, like, after everything that you guys had been through, having her, like, basically say her farewells and her wishes, like, that would destroy me.
Yeah. Yeah, the sequence in the hospital, that was a summary of kind of what happened. But that happened over the course of 4 days following her C-section, where she had a big bed, I had a chair to sleep in, but neither of us could get any sleep. She couldn't sleep because of the panic stuff just kept happening, kept coming in waves. And then I was trying to take care of the baby, and it was like I couldn't sleep, she couldn't sleep. And then at some point our parents would come in during the day and I would go take a nap so that I could at least get some sleep and be there overnight to make sure that Mandy's okay and the baby's okay. She went for almost 3 straight days with no sleep, which probably made all of the symptoms and the panic stuff way worse. But like, it was wild. The whole hospital experience after the C-section is like a quasi dream, very surreal experience all in itself. But yeah, I mean, I guess just to say, and this is maybe showing my own shitty side of myself, but I've known a lot of people and I've heard a lot of talk about mental health and people struggling with anxiety and panic attacks. And I had always kind of felt like, yeah, well, a panic attack does sound hard, but you just got to learn how to deal with it, right? How bad can it be? It's just you're just panicking. You just need to calm down. And not to say I dismiss anyone's experience, but like I had always sort of thought I knew what a panic attack was, and that that can be hard for people to deal with. The type of thing that Mandy experienced is a whole other kind of level, and it gave me a new respect for and reaffirmed my appreciation for the idea that you cannot judge or even think to understand what another person's mental health might be like for them, for their experience. There's a wide range of experience beyond like, oh, I'm a little anxious, oh, I'm panicking because of, whatever's happening. There's a lot of physical stuff to it, body chemistry, brain chemistry, whatever. There's a lot that you can never know about another person's experience. And for pregnant women and or postpartum women, there's a list of all kinds of stuff that can happen. But for anyone, if you have the right body circumstances, whatever needs to happen in your brain or body, for anyone to assume they know how you feel or what it feels like for you when you're having a mental health crisis is a bold assumption. I will never again look at someone who's dealing with mental health issues and think, I know what they're dealing with. It's not that bad. They can handle it. It was in a wild experience. Completely changed my perspective. And I thought I was a pretty understanding person before that, but like, you just can't know what's happening inside another person's head. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners already knew that or already had that appreciation, but this was an experience for me that dramatically opened my eyes to how wide the range of experience is for different people in different situations. So again, Mandy wanted me to not leave that out, and that's very vulnerable and personal, but it can happen.
She dealt with that for 3 or 4 days?
She is still dealing with that.
Oh, God.
So it's much more manageable now. It got to a point where it was more like maybe once or twice a day she would have the panicky feelings come from hormones or whatever it was, and she could deal with them more. They're not as intense. But for 4 straight days in the hospital, it was like inescapable and, all day, all night, that panic attack feeling. And for a couple weeks after we got home, she continued to have it where once a day, maybe not, maybe once, twice a day, she would have that same thing where it was a full-on attack. She would be afraid. She woke up and I had taken the baby to the other room to like just hold him or feed him or whatever. She would be afraid he was dead, that he was gone. She would wake up in a full panic, have no idea what's happening. And it's better now. It's been over a month now since he was born. Just over a month, but it's better than it was. But she still has the same panicky feelings that just come on. They're just less intense as her hormones and stuff are changing, I guess. They're not doing the same thing they were, but It's been a long postpartum experience for Mandy, and has been very rough.
Damn.
Sounds like the entire ordeal has been really hard on her, like from start to finish.
Yeah, for about almost 9 months, maybe more like 8 months now, 8.5. It's been pretty rough. Not able to eat food, extremely nauseous, throwing up every day, multiple times a day, all day, not being able to drink enough water to stay hydrated, and then all the stuff that happened around the birth. None of that is how I thought getting pregnant and having a baby would be for her or for me. Not to play the victim, because I'm fine.
So
I mostly was an observer, but it's wild.
So when's the next coming?
Well, they say she'll be healed up enough in like 3 or 4 months to do it again, and I think we should jump right back into it.
I mean, I don't see why not.
All the kids, that's what I say. 8 kids, 12
You want
kids.
baker's dozen, right?
I want to need 2 cars to go out to dinner.
Got to get the oldest one to drive the youngest ones.
Yeah, that's the way.
Some people have such a smooth pregnancy that they like miss being. I know people that miss being pregnant. They enjoyed being pregnant so much.
You can't imagine that.
That sounds so
yes,
like
yeah.
unbelievably like not possible after listening to your story.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't even want to see a baby for the next month just after hearing your story,
Yeah.
much less.
I don't even know if there is such a thing as an easy pregnancy. I think like even saying that is probably a misnomer. They handle it well, but still.
yeah, it's a hard and traumatic experience for any woman who has a baby, no matter how smoothly it goes. But I had no idea it could be so bad.
Yeah.
There's a miraculously large number of ways that the woman can be made to suffer, all thanks to the baby and or just being pregnant and what her own body does to try and adjust to the pregnancy and get ready for a baby. It's a real unfair experience, speaking as the father. I feel like I watched Mandy suffer for about 9 months, and then I watched Mandy really suffer for about 8 hours, and then I watched Mandy be rushed away and worried if she was going to live or not for a little bit. Then I watched her deal with the aftermath of all that while she was also feeding a baby every 3 hours from her own body. And, I was just there. I was fine. I didn't feel sick or nothing. I mean, it was traumatic for me, but like, and as much as like, that's the worst moment of my life, and especially in that room, waiting to find out what was happening in the operating room, it feels unfair from my perspective to even complain about that. Given that was all happening to Mandy, that she was the one who might have died. She was the one who grew the baby that might be in peril, that might have died, and all of that. How could anything be so bad for me that I have any right to complain?
No.
Compared to her
Mandy's body
experience,
did
you know?
this to you.
Yeah, well,
She put you through this.
Yeah, you lost sleep. Don't forget
you
about
know
that.
whose fault this is.
Yours for getting her pregnant?
Well, hey, Colin, no, that's too far back.
Sorry.
All right, okay.
No, so it turns out that all of the pre-birth stuff was actually the baby's fault.
Oh, yeah, we forgot it's the baby's fault.
Yeah, so it's his own fault, you stupid baby. Apparently what had happened was he got really excited or something when we went to the hospital. He was totally fine before that, but at some point in the hospital, he did a bunch of spinning around for whatever reason.
Yippee! Wahoo!
He tied his own umbilical cord around his neck.
Oh.
So that's why every time there was a contraction and he got squeezed, the cord around his neck also got squeezed, and he was a little bit suffocating or whatever. It was bad. He did it himself.
The same thing happened to Molly. She had her umbilical cord wrapped around her neck too. Same thing. That's terrifying.
Yeah, so we found that after everything settled, the doctor sort of talked to us at some point and was like, yeah, his cord was wrapped all around his body and it was wrapped really tight around his neck. That's probably why he was having such trouble in being in there hanging out, because of the thing strangling him.
Turns out having a jump rope in there to get a head start on your athletic career isn't the best idea for babies.
Yeah, not worth it. You should start him off with a balance ball. Can't hurt yourself with a balance ball. That's what I say.
Can't
You're
they
right.
replace the umbilical cord with one of those like no kink hoses instead?
You're right. At first, I was like, there's no way this sentence could possibly be good. And then you landed. You stuck the landing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you'd think they would have worked on that. Or just like a pipe. You can't wrap a pipe around your neck.
That's true.
It's too pipey.
Hell, after all the plumbing issues we've had, I could help you build a pipe next time. Just give me a call. I'll get some PVC ready.
Just need more mud.
No.
Just needs a bit more mud.
Yeah, this baby's fine. He just needs a little bit more mud.
Oh, your water broke early. Let me patch that up with some mud.
I know a lot about water breaking.
Anyway, that was a real lighthearted romp of an episode, I know, but
Can't wait to see who won.
technically,
oh boy.
let me tally the points here.
No, it's not James. This is all his fault.
It looks like the winner of this episode, where there was a lot of contestant participation, with 2 points, is Wade.
What? I win?
Wait a minute. Are those the 2 points from the very beginning of this episode?
Yeah, those are the only 2 points that I actually really... Oh, no, again, didn't I give you 2, but then take 2 away? So that's sort of zeroed out.
I think you gave it to Wade, so you would
Well,
be even
he
higher.
would have won, but instead he wins.
All right.
Well, you should have had a better... I don't know. You never stood a chance, Mark. Let's be honest. You should have just been better.
This seems unfair. Subreddit, defend me. Rebel against this injustice.
This is my time, and that's my subreddit. It's the Distractible Reddit. We all know this.
Did you know they still count the wins you deducted from me as like the overall score? The big chart.
That's canon.
It's barely...
Oh, it's a new year, and I'm hosting next. I can do it again.
Oh,
My
yeah.
once-a-year power.
You're right.
Well, thanks, guys, for just letting me completely hijack an episode. I'm sorry it wasn't as riotously funny as the last time we did this, but...
I think, considering what you went through, we got more laughs than we probably should have, and I just want to say I am so sorry you guys went through that. Genuinely, I hope everything is smooth sailing from this point forward for you all, and I hope nobody else has to go through anything that bad or, forbid, worse.
And if you guys need anything, just ask. Not talking to the audience. You guys stay out of this.
Yeah, you guys don't mean anything. We care about Mandy and Bob. No, not James. James caused all this.
Yeah, no, he's a jerk. It's his own fault, really. That guy. I can't wait till he gets a job, starts contributing.
I know, right?
There's child labor laws, but are there baby labor laws?
I don't think
Might
so.
be a loophole.
All right, let's...
Sounds like a good loophole to me. But yeah, and thanks for letting me talk about it. It kind of felt good to talk about it. I'm a little sad now, but everyone's fine. So in the present, it is actually okay, despite how everything went. And thanks, listeners, for listening. I don't know if you're going to get anything out of this story unless you're having a baby or thinking about it. I'm not sure. Hopefully something happened when you felt a connection to some part of the story, because it's a lot of crazy, scary stuff. But
So much of it, I think, is hard to even imagine going through until you go through it, like you said.
yeah, I really wasn't prepared. I thought we were just gonna hang out, and then there would just be a baby, and they'd be like push, and then they'd be like wah, and then we'd have a baby.
I thought there would be, a great flood, some pushing, and a baby.
But next week, Wade will be hosting, and it'll be funny.
Listen, let's not set the bar.
Got any sad stories you want to tell? This is a sad story podcast now.
Go sad. All this year, we get sadder and sadder every episode.
I will walk through the entire My Memory of My Dad Dying next week. Buckle up. It's a real tearjerker.
Can I jump in with that one too?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Oh, you guys can both host.
Yeah,
You know what?
double load.
We'll script it. I'll let you win, and then the next week you can tell your dad's story.
Well,
New year, new distractible. Now we're disatable.
I know you feel like a winner, Wade. Do you have a winner speech?
Man, I feel like I really deserve this. Subreddit, you've been yelling, and finally your answers are being heard. Really want to shout out, me for having to listen to the story and all the pain it put me through. So please pity me for having to live through Bob and Mandy's tough time by having to hear the story. It was a really tough hour and 30 minutes or whatever for me. So thank you guys for your pity.
Good speech. Good speech. And Mark, I'm not going to say you're the loser because that feels unfair.
Oh, thanks.
But do you have a non-winner speech? Do you have a participant speech?
Just for everyone out there, know that like all of this is experiences that everyone goes through, or not everyone goes through, but a lot of people go through, and they bear it with dignity and grace, but also sometimes they just don't talk about it. So feel free to speak up, find someone to talk to. You're not suffering in silence. You're not anything like that. Life's hard. Life's real hard sometimes. Keeping life going is very hard. Worth doing though.
I don't know why. I want to throw this out before we end. When you were describing the start of your experience getting to the hospital with security, I pictured babies with like heavy machine guns and like aviators on guarding the hospital ward. And I just want to say that's the imagery I've had in my mind this entire time, is all of your movement throughout the hospital is guarded by babies in diapers, like cigars in their mouth and aviators on as the security.
You're already one, Wade. Save it for the next one.
I will forget by the time next time rolls around. So I had to share that imagery with the world.
Wow.
So you're welcome.
Everybody's welcome.
We should do a tour like that. Everybody's welcome tour. That would never work.
Only if the friends get to come along. You probably don't know what we're talking about, listener. If you want to know, you should check out our YouTube channels, and particularly probably Mark's has the most evidence of the tour that we're discussing, but youtube.com/Markiplier and other places. Wade is Lord Minion777 online and or Minion777 on Twitch. And I am MiceGerm. It's probably written somewhere. So just try and copy paste that or use the, it's hard to spell, but it doesn't really matter. Make sure you check out our merch at store.distractablepodcast.com. And, thanks for listening. And like Mark said, I think that's a good point, Mark. You don't have to talk about anything that has happened, but I will say doing this episode, I think helped me a lot. I was kind of afraid to do it. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, but talking about it helped me process something. I feel differently. I feel better. And if you need someone to talk to, you should find someone to talk to. A friend, therapist, whomever is appropriate. Or don't talk about it if you're not ready. But everyone goes through things. And like Mark said, listen to Mark. Mark did it better. That's the end of the episode. It'll be funny next week. I promise. Promise it will. It can't not be funny next week.
Yeah, why wouldn't he pick him as a winner? That's how it is. It's going to be funny.
That's the truth. It's a fact already. We are out of here. Thanks so much for listening. Podcast out.
Thank you for joining us on that emotional roller coaster. But do please remember that sometimes the hardships and horrors can make life taste so much sweeter. Bob now knows the value of his family and will love them all the more for it. So cheer for Mandy and James, and gentle listener, love without reservation. Until next week on Distractible.